this because I'm kind of loud, but I'll use it just as thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everybody for coming. Sorry, it's only been a year since most of us were together for Dads here. I thought a lot about what to say to start it out, and the last year has been difficult. Mom, when Dad died January 10th, and Mom told me in the hospital that she wanted to live and to do what it took to help her live. And so for a year, just about to the day, for a year, we dedicated our lives to her. Through medical procedures, through counseling. And so I thought a lot about what to say, and the one thing that is important to me to say, and I don't understand it, but mental illness. Mom suffered, and a lot of people don't know the severity of what her mental illness that she went through. And I'm still discovering it to this day. She told me to make sure every book, every envelope, every box was open in that house before it left. And I'm finding notes from the late 60s about depression and about suicide. And she told me a story, which she did almost every day, because I was there almost every day for a year, about one time that she put herself in a car, in a garage, started the car. And she got out of the car because of Chad dying. So I thought I just wanted to share a few things about Mom, that mental illness, even I don't understand it, it's bigger than me, but it's huge. And so Mom, I got her in with a counselor this last year. I got her in with a psychiatrist this last year to help her, but you can't fix 74 years in a few months, in a few visits, in a few, things. But she lived the last year of her life, I felt, one of the best years. There were people that had said, I did not really know her the last year. And I look at them and I say, you didn't know her for 74 years. Because the last year, she was honest, that's where I got it, she was blunt, she was stubborn, that's where I got it, and I would always tell her, Mom, you gave me, and then my daughter, that was her rock. She called my daughter her rock, because my daughter moved in and took care of her the last year. And so it was, that was, I kept telling her that, Mom, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You made us, and I'm thankful for that. I wouldn't trade it. I learned a lot from her and about her life. Chad and I were talking about it the other day, and Chad goes, there's something I didn't need to know. I didn't even know that. But she was just letting everything out. She was just clearing everything, and I'm thankful for that. So we're gonna have our kind of celebration. She wanted to have it here. That's what she said, where Dad's was, and so we did. And I knew the place is small, and so I tried to not be mean or anything. I tried to curtail numbers down and keep it smaller, and we still swelled it. And if we were at a church or something, or a big place, we know we could fill it for Mom. I mean, she had friends and she had acquaintances all over. So I thank you for coming. There's going to be a time in the middle of the service to talk about Mom. When we talked about Dad, there were a few people that didn't get to say what they wanted to say, and then they came and said it after everybody was gone. So Austin, if you need to say anything, just say. So we'll have that sharing time. But thanks for coming. It's about Mom and her celebration, her life. Yeah, so we're gonna start it out with, I think Robbie's going to start out first. It's a good friend of Mom's, Robbie. They had a group of girls, I think Church of Girls, that they would meet all the time, and they were her support staff. And I told them when I kind of got involved, right after Dad passed, I thanked them personally because I feel that they kept Mom alive the last 10 years with her mental and her depression and fighting things. And I thank them all because they were the network that kept her alive. I was told by a doctor when Mom was in bed all the time, don't go to her. Have her get out of bed to come to you. And so I would go to the house, and I'd go to the back window, and I wore a path on the back of the house to go see Dad. And Mom was in bed. And that's the part of the mental illness that you don't get. And now it's like, geez, I mean, this was bigger than even the doctors that were telling her that. And that's sad. And so, but this is her good friend up the street, Robbie, so she's gonna talk to her. I could talk to her, but thank you.
So it's my assignment to kind of set the stage by giving you an overview of the life. I hear that I'm not coming through. I don't know what to do about this. How's that? Is that good? Okay. Virginia Marie Coopers Johnson, known by some as Virginia, by others as Mrs. Johnson. Some called her Mom, Grandma, Aunt, Great Aunt. Many of us knew her as our dear friend. Most importantly, her Heavenly Father knew her as his child. Because she was introduced to me as Ginny back when I met her in 2005, that's how I'll refer to her throughout the rest of this little talk, if that's okay with you guys. She was born on March 9, 1948, to Eunice and Kenneth Coopers here in Spokane, joining her sister Charlotte and brother Eddie. Later, a remarriage brought another sister, Pam, into the family, and then, even more recently, came a newly discovered half-brother named Kenny Godell. Ginny spent her growing up years in Spokane. She was particularly close to her father, and some of her happiest memories center around the two of them boating and camping on Lake Pend Oreille. She attended Catholic school, graduating from Marycliff in 1966. In November of that same year, at St. Charles Catholic Church, she married the dashing John Johnson. They set out establishing a home to which two sons were born in quick succession, Paul and Chad. Theirs was a happy, active family with lots of adventures, including camping trips at Samoan Campground on Lake Pend Oreille. Along with being a wife and mother, Ginny held down a number of interesting jobs outside the home. She had learned to work hard at her father's Greeno grocery store, so she was well equipped to cashier at Indian Trail Service Station and at the PX in Vancouver, Washington, for the several years that John's work took them out of Spokane. Ginny did a great job wherever she was, but her crowning achievement, I do believe, her golden age, so to speak, was her career with Home Interiors. Her obvious flair for decorating moved her up the ladder of success very quickly with home interiors. Here's how it would work. She would have a party at someone's home. She would demonstrate the different wonderful products, and people would begin to decide what they wanted to buy. So a customer would say, I'd like to buy this floral arrangement for the table. And Ginny would say, yeah, that's a good choice. But you know, if you would add a little greenery and a couple of candles and here and there, and before you knew it, a $50 sale turned into a $200 sale. And the customer was very happy, and so was Ginny. She had a solid base, a clientele base of loyal customers that kept her very busy through the years. And the company awarded her lots of prizes. She had a number of mink coats, I heard, and diamond rings and special trips that began to pile up. Her achievements were also recognized beyond the local area, and she was offered at one point the position of being a territorial manager. This offer she turned down, not wanting to sacrifice family time. One factor that helped make Ginny's career in home interiors so successful, I believe, was that Ginny was truly a people person. We all recognized that she was vivacious and outgoing, maybe just slightly over the top sometimes, more the merrier type of gal. Sometime this past year, her granddaughter, Michaela, remarked, "Grandma, you have so many friends." And it was true. Ginny was especially blessed by a multi-decades-long friendship with her grade school classmate, Suzanne. And she was devastated when Suzanne died of pancreatic cancer in 2012, I believe. But this tragic loss did not stop her from opening her heart to other people, one of which was me. I'd like to just highlight a couple of Ginny's passions, one of which was gardening. This special gift was discovered when they lived in Vancouver, Washington, where she and John turned a bare piece of property into a showplace that people would drive by just to see. They did it again with the house on Cherrywood Court. And animals. Ginny loved the wildlife around their home. Bird feeders attracted a lot of fascinating birds, particularly hummingbirds, which were a source of tremendous pleasure to John and Ginny. She took a personal interest in the deer that paraded through their property, and she loved it in the springtime when the baby deer started showing up. My deer, she called them. There were lots of family pets over the years too, I understand. Dogs, birds, Popeye, the parrot, snakes. But I would venture to say that the one pet that brought them the most joy was their last little fluffy white puppy with the imposing name of Brutus. Now, Paul has already brought this up, so I feel less reluctant to do it. Underneath this zest for life personality was a darker side. And I want to touch on it because it is part of her story. In the end, she was an overcomer. But somewhere, somehow, probably way back in her childhood someplace, Ginny became convinced that she was not good enough, that she would never measure up. She put her faith in Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior years ago, and we'll hear more about that from my husband Daniel in just a minute. but she continued to struggle with depression, sometimes seriously. In 2005, Ginny's best friend, Suzanne, persuaded her to come to a Bible study, hoping that the truth of God's unconditional love would get through to her. I was one of the members of this Bible study, and we in the group had the incredible privilege of watching God gradually break down the hopelessness in her spirit and open her up to a life of trust in Him. I think the real breakthrough came one day when she was by herself and God spoke to her heart using a verse from Psalms 46:10. Here's the verse, very short. Be still and know that I am God. That really got through to her. And she couldn't wait for the next meeting of the Bible study to share that with us. But she was finally beginning to grasp on a deep level, thanks to the revelation of that verse, be still and know that I am God. Ginny would say, that means that I can rest. I can relax in the fact that He loves me just as I am. And if He thinks there needs to be some changes made in me, He'll take care of that. That revelation began a new walk of freedom for Ginny Johnson, and we in the group could see it very clearly. Yes, she was still subject to the tormenting voice of the enemy of her soul, who loved to taunt her with, you're not good enough, you never have been and you never will be. Why don't you just give up and die? But Ginny learned to recognize that that voice was coming from outside of her, and she could put a stop to it simply by turning to Jesus, stilling herself, remembering that He is God and she is not, and He loves her. So she practiced this turning exercise all the rest of the days of her life. We're all aware that Ginny faced down cancer at least on 2 different occasions. First lung cancer in 2015, and then brain cancer in 2022. She fought the good fight, which ended exactly 3 months